My name is Harold Bennett. I am 88 years old, and there is a name saved in my phone that I will never call again. I've looked at it 100 times. James Bennett, my brother. I kept meaning to call him. For 30 years I kept meaning to call him. I'd pick up the phone, start to dial, and then think later. I'll do it later. Later never came. 3 years ago, James died of a heart attack. He was 79 years old. He was alone in his apartment, and the last thing I ever said to him was nothing. I'm going to tell you about James today, not because it will bring him back, but because somewhere out there, you have a name in your phone too, and I need you to call them. Before I finish this story, because by the end, you are going to understand why I never did. Ames was 4 years younger than me. 4 years younger, but somehow always wiser. When we were boys, this would have been the late 1940s, early 1950s. We shared a bedroom in a small house in eastern Pennsylvania. James had this laugh, this big, ridiculous laugh that you could hear from 2 houses down. Our mother used to say, if the neighbors can't hear James laughing, something is wrong. We were inseparable until our mid-20s. Then life did what life does. I got married. He moved west. We talk on the phone every few months, then every year, then less. There was one Christmas, 1987, I believe. Margaret and I had a big house then. The children were still young. We had room for James. I called him in October. I said, James, come for Christmas this year. Come and stay with us. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'd really like that, Harold. He meant it. I could hear it in his voice. He was going to come. 2 weeks before Christmas, I called him back. I said, James, the kids are in school plays. Margaret's mother is coming. The house is going to be. It's a lot. Maybe this isn't the year. He was quiet again. Then he said, Okay, Harold, maybe next year. There was never a next year. I told myself it was just logistics, just timing. But James never mentioned Christmas again after that. He never asked again. I think he understood something that day that I wouldn't understand until much later. That when someone keeps saying later, they might mean never. They just don't know it yet. It wasn't a falling out. There was no big fight, no broken promise, no single moment where things went wrong. That is the part I want you to understand. We didn't drift apart because of anger. We drifted apart because of nothing. Because I was busy. Because I thought there was more time. Because I always thought, I'll call James after the holidays. I'll call him when work settles down. I'll call him when the kids are grown. And then the kids were grown. And I still didn't call. Around the year 2000, James called me. He had just retired. He wanted to come visit. He wanted to sit on the porch, drink coffee, catch up like we used to. I said, James, this isn't a good time. Margaret has been unwell. Maybe next spring. Next spring came. James called again. He said, Harold, I've been thinking about you. I miss you, brother. I said, I miss you too, James. Things have just been complicated, he said. They always are. That was the last time he came close to saying what he meant to say. After that, the calls got shorter, less frequent. Then Margaret passed. I should have called James the day she died. He should have been the first person I called. Instead, I sat in my kitchen for 3 days, answering nobody. James left a voicemail, a long one. He was crying. I listened to that voicemail many times. On nights when the house was too quiet, I would play it just to hear his voice. He said, "Harold, I know you're there. I know you're hurting. I've been thinking about you every day. I remember the last time I saw you, brother. It was at Daddy's funeral. That was 11 years ago. 11 years. We're not young men anymore, Harold. I don't care about whatever happened. I don't care how long it's been. I just want to hear your voice. Call me back. Please. I'm your brother, and I love you." I memorized every word of that message. I played it so many times that when I'd close my eyes at night, I could hear James saying it. "I love you." He had never said that to me before, not once in our entire lives. Not as boys, not as men, in our family. Oh, you didn't say things like that. You showed it by being there, and I hadn't been there. So he said it, in a voicemail, to a man who wouldn't call him back. About a year later, I tried to play that voicemail again. It was gone. James had gotten a new phone, a new number. The message had been deleted automatically. I still had his new number. Robert had given it to me, but his voice, the way he said those words, that was gone, and I hadn't even said goodbye to it. About 2 years after Margaret passed, I started feeling it, that feeling that time is getting shorter. I'd sit in this chair, and I'd think about James, about that laugh, about the bedroom we shared, about who we used to be. I found an old photograph of the two of us. We couldn't have been more than 10 and 14, standing in front of our father's truck. James has his arm around me. I'm grinning like I don't have a care in the world. I put that photograph on my kitchen table, and I looked at it every morning. Every morning I told myself, Today I'm going to call James. About 2 years before James died, I bought a train ticket. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the photograph on the table. Maybe it was a dream I had about him. I bought a ticket to Portland. That's where James had settled. The ticket was for a Tuesday in April. I had it printed, held it in my hand. I even packed a small bag, 2 shirts, my good trousers, the photograph of us boys. I was going to show up at James's door. I didn't call ahead. I was afraid if I called ahead, I would talk myself out of it. Monday night, the night before I was supposed to leave, I sat in this chair, and I thought, what if he doesn't want to see me? What if he's moved on? What if he opens the door and looks at me the way people look at someone they've given up on? I canceled the ticket. They gave me a full refund. I unpacked the small bag, hung the 2 shirts back in the closet, and I told myself, maybe in the fall, maybe when the weather is better, Maybe when I'm feeling stronger. James died the following February. The weather was fine in the fall. I was feeling fine. I just didn't go. A train ticket. That's all that stood between me and my brother. A train ticket I was too afraid to use. I'd pick up the phone, scroll to his name, and then I'd think, what do I even say? Where do we start? It's been so long. He probably doesn't even... And I'd put the phone down. It wasn't pride exactly. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something worse. It was shame. I was ashamed that I had let it go this long. And so, every day that passed made it harder to pick up the phone. Because the longer you wait, the bigger the silence becomes. And eventually the silence grows so large, you don't believe your voice can fill it anymore. It was a Thursday morning, February. I remember the light in the kitchen was pale. That thin, flat winter light. My nephew called. James' son. Robert. He said, "Uncle Harold, Dad's gone. Heart attack in the night." He went in his sleep. I couldn't say anything. Robert was crying. I should have been comforting him. Instead I said, "Thank you for telling me, Robert." And I hung up, and I sat in this chair. And I looked at that photograph on the kitchen table. The two of us, standing in front of our father's truck, James's arm around me. And I picked up my phone, and I scrolled to his name, James Bennett, and I called it. It rang 3 times, and then a recorded voice said, "The number you are trying to reach is no longer in service." I called it again. "The number you are trying to reach is no longer in service." That is when I understood. You cannot call the dead. And I had wasted 30 years, afraid to call the living. What I know now, I've had 3 years to sit with this. 3 years to turn it over in my mind. And here is what I've come to understand. What silence becomes. Silence is not nothing. Silence is a living thing. The longer it goes on, the heavier it becomes. When James and I first stopped talking regularly, the silence was small. Just a few missed calls, a few holidays apart. But silence grows. And as it grows, it starts to feel like a wall. And you think, the wall is too high now. I could never climb over it. But that is not the truth. The truth is, you built the wall, brick by brick, year by year. Every time you said later, every time you put the phone down, every time you chose comfort over courage, you laid another brick. And the cruelest part is this. The wall you built to protect yourself from shame became the thing you were most ashamed of. If I had called James in 1997, it would have been a small call. If I had called him in 2005, it would have been an awkward call. If I had called him in 2015, it would have been an emotional call. But any of those calls would have been a call. Instead, I waited for a call that required no courage, no awkwardness, no explaining. That call doesn't exist. It never existed. The only call that matters is the one you're afraid to make. We tell ourselves we are waiting for the right moment, but there is no right moment. There is only this moment, and the next moment, and one day, the moment The shame of waiting too long is real. I know it better than most. But here is what I also know. Shame is not a reason to keep waiting. Shame is a reason to call, because the call does not need to be perfect. It does not need to explain 30 years. It does not need to undo the silence. It only needs to begin. The close, if there is someone in your life you have been meaning to call, I am asking you to stop this video right now and call them. I know the silence has grown. I know you don't know where to start. Start with 3 words. I've been thinking about you. That is all. That is enough. That is all James ever needed from me, and I never gave it to him. Don't be me. Pick up the phone. My name is Harold Bennett, and I've said what I needed to say. Thank you for listening my story. Subscribe my channel for more.